Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels, and yes, we're doing this morning for once I have makeup on because I wanted to feel pretty. We're going back to that horrible world known as the JRC this morning, but before we get started, the usual disclaimers. First off, this article will be available right there in the description box, right alongside the other pertinent links to the Stop the Shocks campaign, including Autistic Hoya's massive archive on the subject and the templates, folks. You know the drill. Click on your name, find your senator. Oh my gosh. Sign your name, click on your senator. And the ever present self explanatory change.org Shut the Judge Rotenberg Center Down petition. Folks, when we talk about the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of, catch clips of surveillance footage of people with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, please use your headphones, all right? All right. Apparently, my kitty smells something. Not sure what. All right. Now, when we talk about the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of, I catch clips of surveillance footage of people with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, please use your headphones, all right? Okay, folks, it is 9:42 a.m. in the morning. I have not started cleaning yet, but as Mr. Mew can tell you, yes, I am indeed exhausted. So if I stumble over my words this morning, you know the drill. My apologies in advance, all right? Okay, so where we start left off yesterday. Whew. Okay. Abandoned in the camp. Punishment and bare life. Trigger warning. Graphic descriptions of abuse, neglect, and death are present. Okay. So this is going to be heavy, folks. This one's going to be heavy. I gotta move that down a little. The camp, as ascribed by Agabin, is not a relic of the past, but instead describes a contemporary spatial theory of power. One such contemporary example of the camp is the JRC. We argue here that within the JRC, disabled subjects, especially those with behavioral and intellectual impairments, are conceived of as zo, natural life, rather than bios, political life, because the expressions of life of disabled people is negated as states of exception on account of their association with negative humanism. Agabin, citing Carl Binding, a penal law scholar, derived the concept of life unworthy of being lived. There it is, folks. There it is. Right there. That's the medical model right there in a nutshell. They don't think our lives are worthy being lived. There it is. And or a life devoid of value that reaches a threshold beyond which life ceases to have any judicial value. While originally this argument was utilized to justify the severity of a living man to take his own life, it was also extended to include incurable idiots, either those born or such as those who suffer from progressive paralysis, being paralyzed, we'll just say that, who have become such in the last phase of their life. When ableist discourses constitute disabled people as having neither the will to live nor the will to die, then as per modern biopolitics they are constituted as bare life, and left under the decision-making power of the physician who serves as the substitute for the surveying. As such, the biopolitics marks the integration of medicine and politics, where the discussion of pain or even harm to the body is rendered irrelevant to the discussion at hand. Here, as Agabin points out in a chilling accuracy, in the biopolitical horizon that characterizes modernity, the physician and the scientist move in the no man's land, where subjection to experimentation can either return to the human body to life or definitively consign it to death to which it already belongs. Bastards. An example of biopolitics that consigns a body to death to which it already belongs is apparent in how behaviorists and physicians have justified aversive technologies. Yes. According to Israel, the founder of JRC, behavioral procedures that will effectively eliminate problematic behaviors and help the student improve his or her condition and live a more normal life often have to be highly abnormal at first until the behavior changes sufficiently. Fuck me. Israel, Para 13. When in 2007, Dr. J. Easton, a professor at biomedical engineering, was asked about ESDs used by JRC, he pointed out the abnormality existent in the fact that the lowest level of shock the JRC used was roughly twice that what pain researchers have said is tolerable for most humans. Think about that for a second. Kaufman, 2007. And the highest level was 3 times the lowest amount. Response JRC's lawyer used the justification that the current had to hurt to work. Bastards. And claimed that the highest shock was no more than a hard pinch. Bullshit. Explain the screams of Andre McCullens, you sick fuck. That the pain is assumed to be both inconsequential and necessary is justified purely on the basis of ontological, being disabled with intellectual disabilities, autism, and or mental illness. Here the subject is not conceived of as a productive, docile body, but rather as the traumatized, paradoxical body, able to tolerate necessary aversive interventions because it exists within the state of exception. In an interview with People magazine, Israel defended his exceptional treatments by describing JRC as kinder, gentler alternative to the state institution. Plummer, 1986. His interviewer observed that, for Kim, the institute is the end of the therapy's road, beyond which, says Israel, lies the judge of the state medical hospital. Israel says that if his critics really want to see cruel and unusual punishment, they should visit the state institution unannounced and take a look at the over-medicized zombies there. Fucking really. And they use that same shit, folks. They use it to this day, and it's a lie. Pharmacology has evolved leaps and bounds from this time period. Leaps and bounds. It's extraordinary, really. But they still justify their inhumane, sick cruelty to these kids by using the same lines. But moving on. Drugs, he says, are not used at BRI, and no one is turned away. No matter how big, how old, disgusting the student, we won't say no. How disgusting! You fucking dick! We must be aesthetically pleasing to you to deserve the right to exist and not be harmed. You. Here, the JRC, as opposed to the camp, is described as a safe haven from the terrors of the outside world. You know, if I had to choose the terrors of the outside world and but JRC, I'm gonna take the outside world, because nothing, even of the cruelty and inhumanity that I have faced in the outside world, comes anywhere near the fucking horrors those poor kids have to deal with every day, and we all fucking know it. Which encloses to protect, folds back on itself, and becomes a space wherein safety and terror can become indistinguishable. Israel also describes his vulnerable clients as disgusting, a term that has political and legal power to constitute disabled bodies as bare life. This political and legal power within the institution also offers parents a ready-made discourse of therapy to justify their decision to abandon their children in the camp. In fact, even before entering the JRC, Flanagan defended placing his 29-year-old severely autistic son, Chris, at the BRI for 8 years. We knew the only alternative to BRI was the state institution, where Chris would be sodomized, beaten, and, if you were lucky, held in a straitjacket. They're torture palaces. And the JRC isn't really, because guess what? Rape has happened there. Sexual exploitation has happened there. Torture has happened there. You really think JRC is that different from a state institution? Folks, back in the day, Both my parents used to work for a quote unquote state hospital. I was around these people. I saw the treatments with my own eyes. I would wonder without a superintendent or somebody, a supervisor to watch me. And I promise you, from what I fucking saw there, they were 1,000 times more humane than what these bastards do to disabled kids every goddamn day. Just saying. Flanagan accepts that the BRI's tactics genuinely horrifies some outsiders, but as the father of the autistic victim, Plummer, he views Dr. Israel's program as a blessing. Similarly, the New York Times article Kaufman interviewed a mother who also fought for the use of it versus for her 20-year-old daughter who had been at the school for 4 years. I understand people who don't know about it think it's cruel, but she's not permanently scarred and she has learned that certain behaviors like running up and biting people in the face are not acceptable. Her behaviors were not acceptable for society. Now I think I can bring her home. It's exhausting, folks, and God, we're fucking tired. But this type of mentality really has people believing to this day in 2022 that only by fucking punishing and torturing and beating us, the same justifications that are used for from abusers fucking everywhere is justifiable. Any means necessary comes to mind. The fact of the matter is, folks, the media, everybody has let us fucking down because there have been other programs with huge, massive success rates. Yes, for people that are the most severe of cases for over 3 fucking decades. Just saying. But nobody ever talks about it. Education is wonderful, but when we keep being refused a platform in order to inform the public about the options out there and the success rates, you see where I'm going with this, right? And then let's talk about the poor communities real quick that people like the JRC fucking prey on. Why do these parents not know any better? They've never been taught any better. They don't have any resources in their goddamn communities so that kids can actually get other programs that do not torture their fucking kids that have had results. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. Just saying. Sorry, I had to rant there. In both examples, we observed parents were aware that their disabled children are already assigned a negative humanism that locates them within the state of exception, and that thus feel compelled to enable the physician, Dr. Israel, acting as a quasi-supreme, to deploy biopolitical power to consign the subject to life or to death to which it is already belongs. Survivors who experienced those adversive treatments offered different testimony. Jennifer Masumba, 2014, in her testimony remembered this. It's not safe. It doesn't feel safe. I ended up having nightmares weekly, if not nightly, at least once a week, about JRC and the GEDs and being on the GEDs. In those nightmares, I'm getting shocked. During the day, if I hear certain noises, like Velcro they used to use to keep them closed, I freeze. I feel like it's about to happen to me. If I'm having a hard time, I start to think I'm there again and that I'm going to get shocked for it. I've been to dozens of horrible places, hospitals, residential schools. I have never once had a nightmare about any of them. After years of the litigation, investigations, and position statements from several disability rights organizations, the FDA met on 24th of April 2014 to review the information that would assist them in the decision to ban ESDs from aversive conditioning. Their specific focus was on a previously FDA-approved GED used by the JRC in order to increase the amount of current produced to 3 times the approved level in order to create aversive stimuli for the residents who appeared to tolerate lower levels of electric shocks. The following is an example from the testimony of two participants. Dr. Dorsey, a member of the FDA panel reviewing the use of ESDs, and Dr. Blackenrush, a representative for the JRC. Dr. Dorsey, I have questions pertaining to your contentions around risks, efficacy, and questions about its application. In your materials and your discussions, you discuss that administering these shocks is harmless and that the risks are theoretical. How can a device that is designed to cause harm, designed to cause pain, be harmless and have theoretical risks? Dr. Blinkush. Well, it's not designed to cause harm. Bullshit! Dr. Israel literally said it is made to hurt people. Remember, it is designed to render the behaviors by applying electrical stimulus that is sufficient enough to reduce the problem behavior. So I don't think it's designed to injure the person. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And it's not designed to cause harm to the person. It's designed to treat the person's behavior disorder. This is what they use, folks. They're either fucking blind or they're sick. Does the stimulus cause pain? Yes or no? Yes. Is the pain a form of harm? Well, then if we wanted, is pain a form of harm? I think it's something that people would work to avoid and something that we would rather do without, yes. So, if you want to say it is a physical harm, no. Bullshit. No, but is it uncomfortable? Yeah, it's part of the process, and it's one of those things that we take into account in terms of risks and benefits. United States of America, Department of Health and Human Services, Food and Drug Administration, FDA Center of Devices and Radiological Health, Medical Devices Advisory Committee, Neurosurgical Devices Panel. God, these sick fucks. In the above interchange, Dr. Blinkush treats the evidence of pain as theoretical risk because science cannot accurately measure pain. This position is supported by many behaviorists like Dr. Ivar Levis, the founder of the Levis method, another normalizing and invasive behavioral therapy, applied behavioral analysis, fucking ABA. The extensive presence in pain in everyday life may suggest that it is necessary for the establishment and maintenance of normal human interactions. Despite the pervasiveness of pain in daily functioning, it is possible for necessary maintaining behaviors psychology-related professionals shied away from and often condemned the use of pain for therapeutic purposes. Yeah, for fucking reasons. We agree with Solomon that each objections to use to pain have a moral rather than scientific basis. Bullshit. Really? Really? Explain the catatonia of Andre McCollins, fucker. Levis, however, later moved away from the use of severe pain as aversive after learning that the children would eventually revert to past behavior when they were no longer subjected to the pain. ABA, however, is also considered abusive and traumatizing to people as well. Along with the discourses of science, the rhetoric of war also invades the camp as a further justification of the violence unleashed against disabled residents. For example, one of the leading autism advocacy groups in the U.S., Autism Speaks, organized by parents who have lost their children to autism, for fuck's sake, used a campaign of fear. Thank you. Where autism takes a life of its own and possesses and steals children away from their families. Goddamn changeling narrative, folks. McGuire, 2016, describes how this rhetoric blends with the rhetoric of the war on terror to create a frame that conditions into possibility the very particular appearance of pathology, terrifying and terrorizing enemy figures, and so doing delimits the range of possible reactions or responses to those bodies marked as or conflated with such figurization. In the face of so much terror, what is required as immediate militarized acts of intervention and rehabilitation, invasion, and occupation. And most of the weaponry is directed towards the disabled subject as bare life. The material experience of being located with the state of exception occurs not via an act of exclusion, but via the enactment of the ban that contains the subject within the boundaries of the camp, through the law of abandonment. This is because, according to Agabin, He who has been banned is not, in fact, simply set outside the law and made indifferent to it, but rather abandoned by it. That is, exposed and threatened on the threshold of which life and law, outside and inside, becomes indistinguishable. Too many survivors of the JRC, as well as the disability rights activists, this practice of abandonment aptly describes the context of punitive care, according to the residents at the JRC. Thus, for example, an anonymous survivor of the JRC describes in graphic detail the effective experience when one is abandoned by the law. The most sickening, horrifying experience of my life was being shocked on the restraint board. What is the board? It is a large, door-sized contraption made out of hard plastic, with locking restraint cuffs on each corner, where your wrists and ankles get locked in. Your body becomes stretched spread eagle style, pinned tight, rendering you completely helpless, combined with an overwhelming feeling of vulnerability. It is a torture that you would expect to see in a horror movie. The kind that makes you cringe and scream while you watch. The kind you can't get out of your head even after it's over. Only this was happening for real to me. Judge Rotenberg Center Letter, 2013. These critiques have also been echoed by autistic advocates Lydia Brown and Shane Neumeyer, who provided testimony to the Massachusetts Joint Committee on Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities at a hearing in 2015 on the four bills related to the use of aversive punitive behavior modification on people with disabilities. Neumeyer testified that aversive attempts to modify and target behaviors through the use of punishments that cause physical pain or discomfort. This by itself raises significant ethics and human rights concerns, especially in the light of the fact that these interventions are used partially on populations whose members have no legal right to refuse treatment and are rarely, if ever, given the opportunity to do so. The above testimonials, by grounding the real violence, also gave rise to both complementary and yet contesting observations. Both testimonials foreground how disabled subjects with labels related to intellectual impairments, mental abuse, and autism, by being subject to the violence of the camp, can find common ground with Agman's enigmatic figure of the Muslim man. A subject minus the supplement of social recognizability as such exemplifies life itself. And yet, while the paths of the Muslim man may epitomize the violence experienced by the disabled students at the JRC, Agabin's account of the Muslim man rejects any possibility of resistance agency. But that we know is not true. While there were residents who did not use oral speech, there were others whose testimony, as in the testimony is included here, acted as subject agents notwithstanding their consignment to the state of exception as bare life. And yet, as James Overhoe has pointed out, the expressions of life of disabled people, by being construed through the lens of a restrictive humanism, implies that this testimony, though loudly articulated, is rarely recognized as valid by surveying powers. Thank you. Thus, brutal as the material evidence of aversives have been for disabled residents at the JRC, even more brutal is the ontological violence that undermines the very structure of disabled subjectivity, now located within the state of exception, thus calling the disabled subject outside the realm of political life. Thus, even though disability activists offer testimonies located within the rights-based discourse, the effectiveness of those testimonies in courts of laws are meditated via negative ontologies that construct disabled subjects as bare life abandoned within the legal limbo of the camp. So let's think about this. Even those like Jennifer Masumba who can articulate about the horrors she went through, get dismissed. Those who speak up on their behalf, they get dismissed. And why? It's because humanity as a whole, as a collective, still live with this kind of mind frame that our lives are not worth living. As I've said many times before, they don't see us as real people. And therefore, anything that is committed against us doesn't matter. As long as it's in the main, as long as it's treatment, people can go to sleep at night. You see what I mean? They have consigned us to this area of those who are not fit to live. And because we are not fit to live, they also believe that we are not fit to have civil rights, autonomy, control over our own lives. The list goes on. Think about the Britney Spears situation for a moment. That is the life of thousands of disabled people, millions of them, all over the world. Think about how hard she, a known celebrity, had to fight in order to get heard. And think about the person who's not so well known, how hard we have to fight just to be heard. Okay, and on that topic, I'm going to go ahead and close out for this morning. We don't get very many views on this channel, and especially on this subject. The few that we do tend to get removed from time to time. So folks, please don't forget to hit that like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit the comments. Do appreciate your time this morning. As always, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.